Okay, this video is going to address questions that go under the umbrella of buying and owning a home. First question, doesn't it depend on why you want a home? Does the decision change significantly if you plan on having a partner and roommates? If you plan on kids, when should you buy a house? Great questions, and I know we say it a lot, it is complicated. Except for the first question, doesn't it depend on why you want a home? Of course. Of course. Everyone has different reasons for wanting to rent versus wanting to buy. And you have to put down all those reasons and what's valuable for you. The biggest reasons people choose to either rent or buy is the need for space versus the cost of space. If you have a big family, it would probably end up costing more to rent a place big enough for your family. Whereas if it's just you, you could get a lot cheaper cost by renting and sharing that space with other people. So a lot of it comes down to what space do you need? And then, of course, all the other considerations we talked about. Does the decision change significantly if you are planning for roommates? Roommates, yes. We have talked about that in many other questions, okay? So the decision changes a lot if you're willing to roommate, whether you buy a house or not buy a house, having other people living with you. But there's also this idea of partner, okay? And so an easy way to say is married, but partner, really the distinction is that your finances are mixed, whether married or not. Someone else that you have mixed finances with. And that means the pool of money is both of yours. And then that changes the idea too, because everyone's income is together, everyone's expenses are shared, people's futures are mixed in, future finances are mixed in. So if one person pays more, it's shared, and the future money and retirement is all mixed in. Retirement accounts are not mixed, but so when you have a partner, married or not, that changes the equation of what you're looking for. And finally, on this set of questions, if you plan on kids, when should you buy a house? Oh my gosh, that's a huge question, and there's no right answer. So I will say this though. Buying a house is a huge financial change, and it really changes someone's budget. And oftentimes it's not easy to make a transition buying a house and learning all the expenses and budgeting for it. The same thing I just said with houses applies to kids. Having a child, especially the first child, hugely impacts the budget and people's time and people's schedule and their money. So both of these decisions, buying and having kids, are huge influences. So take that for what it's worth when you would be scheduling purchase of a house versus purchase of kids. Purchase of a house versus having children. This question references in general, you should be willing to stay in a house for about 5 years to make it financially kind of worthwhile. So how certain should you be with your career before buying a house? Well, we're looking at, first, you should be stable with your career. You want to be in a career, and it's like if you think there's not really a big chance of you being fired, that's a must, right? Because being fired and not having your income, it hurts even doubly and gets you in a world of hurt when you have just bought a house, okay? So, you want to be stable in your career, and you want, no one can predict the future, but looking forward, you want to say like, oh, well, I'm probably, not going to be fired in the next couple years. So you want that type of stability. And if you think you might be moving for work, you just got to figure, what are the chances, okay? Like if it's a guaranteed or if it's a really high probability that you're going to be moving in 3 years, you might want to think twice about buying that house. But once again, we can't predict the future. So, if you do end up moving for a good reason with your career, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like, unless the housing market tanks, you're just going to lose a couple $1,000s, and you'd assume that you're moving for a very good career reason. So it's just one of those things that happen in life. It's all, make the decision based on how certain you are. You don't have to be 100% certain, But you have to be on the other side of stability, right? So fairly certain. Is it possible to buy a house without interest? If you buy a house in cash, yes. So if you've got $120,000, $150,000 literally in your bank account, you could go purchase a house in some areas. I would ask you though, what could that money be doing if you invested it? If it's in your retirement account and if it's in there. So you go on day one and you purchase your house. You don't have a payment. You own the house. But that's $150,000 that could be somewhere doubling every 5, 10, 12 years. So there's an opportunity cost of what you could be doing with that money if you buy your house in cash. There is no way to borrow money without paying interest. No one will lend you money for free. They're always going to charge interest. So if you have to borrow money to buy a house, you're going to have to pay the interest. Here's a very interesting question. Is it a waste of money if I decided to buy a house that already needs repairs? Old and damaged houses. First thing we want to say is that whenever you buy a house, you will search for a very good home inspector. They will spend hours, 3 to 4 hours, going over everything in that house. They will be looking for the repairs it needs, and they will give you a multiple-page report telling you everything. A good home inspector is a must, and you have to ask them, are you going to spend 3 or 4 hours? Will you do everything? And they will let you walk around with them when they're inspecting the home before you buy. So that I highly recommend, so you know what's going on in that home. And if there's major repairs, you don't have to buy it. You can get out of the contract, okay? So that being said, every home you buy has some things you need to do to not only get it up to your own standards, but to keep it going. And you can't avoid this because new houses have problems too. And so you're going into it expecting to do some repairs. And now, the more you can do yourself, the better a deal you can get. So if the bathroom is hideous, you're going to pay less for that house. And if you can redo a bathroom yourself, you can do that for pretty cheap. And now you've just increased the value of your house. If the kitchen is hideous and you can do that repair, then you can buy the house cheaper and you can do that repair. Now you got a great kitchen upgrade. If you can do plumbing and you know the plumbing is going to need some work, if you can replace a furnace, the more you can do yourself. If the wood work is bad on the house or if the deck is unsafe, that means the house will be selling for cheaper. And if you do the work, you can get a great deal. And it won't cost. If you have to hire everyone to do it, you're going to be spending a lot of money. Contractors do good work. It just costs money. If you can do it yourself, that is a fantastic way to get a great deal on a house. I'd like to mention too, most houses are not bought new. And most houses are, unless you're in a very growing area, most houses in the markets that I've been familiar with in New York are old. And here's the thing about old houses. As you continually upkeep them, they can last for over 100 years. I've lived and owned 3 different houses. Each one of them was over 100 years old, made in the late 1800s and early 1900s. But because they were upkept well, because people kept doing repairs, and I can do the repairs, these houses, they were fine. They were modernized. They weren't falling apart. Houses with repairs, they last. It's not like you're buying a 30-year-old car and you're going to have all of these problems every single day. A well-maintained 100-year-old house, it can literally go for years with no problems as long as you maintain it. Don't be scared of an old house. Always examine what condition it is through your home inspector, because old houses are not, and sometimes they say they're not bad. Sometimes they say they don't make them like they used to. New houses have problems too. old house is not automatically bad. All right. Is it true that if there are higher school taxes with your house, that it is a better school district? Now, I try to stay away from the terms better school district, worse school district, because that's a whole different conversation. However, in the way that you're thinking with the term better, is it true that higher taxes means it's a, quote, better school, the way you're thinking? No. No. School taxes are based on many other factors. And the amount of taxes per property does not automatically mean the school is a better school district. Okay, certain things like the business to resident ratio of your city, town, how many tax exempt properties are in the city or town, the number of students per population, all go into how much the school needs per year versus the properties that can be how the taxes are on the properties, okay? But there is something that's similar to it that is true. Typically, what you're thinking there is a desired school district increases the price of housing. So let's take taxes out of it. If many people look at a school district and say, wow, I like that school district, that will increase the price of houses in a city or a town. Okay, that is a direct relationship that we see all the time in places that fund their schools through school property tax. The reason being, going back to supply and demand. If many families want to live in an area because of the school, because they want a quote-unquote desired good school for their kids, that means many people will want to buy houses. When you have a lot of people wanting to buy, the demand is high and the price will go up. Because if I'm selling a house and I've got 20 people wanting to buy that house, well, I'm going to set that price pretty high. And then one of those 20 people will have enough money to pay it. Supply and demand. And the demand is because of the reputation of the school district. One of the reasons. This question could be really in our renting answers, and maybe I'll put that there too, but it's a quick answer and it's an interesting answer. Who pays for water and electric in buying versus renting situations? Well, the easiest answer is when you own your house, you pay for the electric based on the use by the owner. You set up your account with the electric company and they bill you. Water is also based on an amount used by the owner. Okay, the owner of the house has the account with the city, and there's a minimum you pay, and then it's over the minimum. It's based on how much you use. It typically comes out to be somewhere around $1 a day, $400. So some water is more expensive, others is less, and $400 per year. And it depends how much you're using, how much showers, filling a pool, and you're going to pay more for that. Okay, water is fairly reasonably priced, and you all pay for it. If you own your house, you pay for everything. Now, when you rent, almost always, you will set up an account. The renter will set up an electric account. It will be in the renter's name. The renter will pay the electric every single month, and the landlord has nothing to do with it. Water, when you are renting, is often included because it's not really that much of a cost. The renter can never get water in their own name. It has to be in the homeowner's name. So the landlord usually just has the rent high enough to cover normal water usage. And of course, if you're a smart landlord, you put it in your lease that if the usage goes above normal, the renter has to pay. Okay, some landlords will absolutely bill their renters for the water with a bill every half year. That's a lot of work that can be avoided, but it is sometimes done. Sometimes the landlords will quote utilities included. The landlord will pay for the electric, the heat, and the water. It's pretty obvious what electric and heating and water will cost per year. So what the landlord does is just put it into the rent, so the rent actually will cover all of it. Usually when you are renting from a place that says utilities included, now remember, It's very simple, but the landlord is always protecting themselves, so chances are you're actually going to be paying more than you actually use, because the landlord has to protect themselves. So there is nothing for quote-unquote free. You're paying it somewhere. I hope that helped. It's a slightly complicated. Did I say this was a simple answer? It's slightly longer. And it's slightly more complicated. Sorry if I said it was simple. It's definitely something. There are many different ways to do it. Many different ways. So there's many different scenarios for that. All right.